Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Star Wars and Disney pretty closely these last several months. Kathleen Kennedy basically just told a complete and total lie about Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie. I did a video about this the other day because it was, known and it was obvious that, of course, Kathleen Kennedy wouldn't just lie in an interview and say there never was a Kevin Feige project that was in development. But it turns out that was a complete lie. This is very strange for a multi-billion dollar company. Multi-billion dollar companies do not go around putting out false statements left, right, and center. Disney does, though, apparently, and I can't imagine it's only about Kathleen Kennedy and whether or not she's jealous and upset about Kevin Feige. This is not something you can actually do. Now, it's not like it was in some notice of public filings. It's not like it's something that was part of a quarterly or an annual report, but still, it's incredibly inappropriate to be sitting in an interview, and if you're taken aback about a question, come up with a completely false answer that makes it look like the truth is something different from what you're telling people. This is something that was covered in Bounding Into Comics, and it was also covered well in Puck.News. Puck.News is a great website by Matt Belloni. Here's what she said. She was asked, quote, "I'm thinking about projects like Rogue Squadron and Kevin Feige's project. Could those still see the light of day?" Kennedy responded, "Well, Kevin Feige's project was something announced in the press, or as I suppose fandom, but nothing ever got developed. We never discussed an idea. As everybody knows, Kevin Feige's a huge Star Wars fan. If he did come up with something, I would be all ears, but that's never really happened. It's not an abandoned project. It just didn't happen," she said. Well, that's really strange because, and here's the evidence for it, her boss announced the project and then it was covered on the official Star Wars YouTube channel. It's a very bizarre statement to make, knowing that it's easy to go and check what she said. I mean, a lot of things happened between then and now, but it's not like this is something she would forget, particularly because Kevin Feige was kind of encroaching on her territory. At the point where she's not able to make any Star Wars movies, or at the point where Kevin Feige looks like he could handle the franchise better than she can handle the franchise, this is business and these decisions get made. And sometimes things happen that people aren't so happy about. So that's understandable. It's understandable that she would have felt insulted that here's Kevin Feige going to come in and start messing with her girl power Star Wars universe, but they aren't her properties. This is something she's responsible for. It's not like she can just go and say and do whatever she wants. And if her boss wasn't happy with what she was doing, well, it's very possible she could get moved out or at least have additional scrutiny on her. And that's the impression that I'm getting, is that she's got additional scrutiny on her. We've heard that Bob Iger was supposedly going to be demanding that she release the movie for Christmas 2025 under the Star Wars brand, that she's not allowed to develop anything else other than Star Wars properties right now, and that if she didn't have a movie that was in development, he was going to yank her out of the company. And that would explain the 3 projects that they've launched recently for Star Wars without any release dates, essentially just saying, hey, look, we're going to develop these 3, whichever one looks like it's furthest along, or whichever one of the 3 that she could then present to Bob Iger and get Bob Iger to sign off on and say, yeah, you're allowed to get this one out. This one looks the most promising for Christmas 2025. Let's get into this article from Puck. Before we do, please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate you guys. Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars amnesia. The Lucasfilm president was never enthusiastic about a now-shelved Kevin Feige Star Wars project. Is that why she seemed to, quote, forget its existence? Kathleen Kennedy is not fooling anybody. Well, she fooled me for a day or two. A lot of rolled eyes at Marvel this weekend after Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy downplayed the recently shelved Star Wars project that was in development from Marvel's Kevin Feige. That project, according to Kennedy, was something announced in the press or fandom, but there was never anything that got developed. It's not an abandoned project, it just didn't happen. Puck News says the Kevin Feige Star Wars project was and still is very much real, and Kennedy was not only aware of it, she was actually receiving periodic updates on its status, including when Marvel's go-to Michael Waldron was hired to write it. In fact, far from being something announced in the press or fandom, whatever that's supposed to mean, it was actually Alan Horn, her boss at the time, who is now with Warner Brothers Discovery as a consultant, when he was running Disney's film group, who announced the project himself in 2019. With the close of the Skywalker saga, Kathy is pursuing a new era in Star Wars storytelling, Alan Horn told The Hollywood Reporter at the time, and knowing what a diehard fan Kevin is, it made sense for these 2 extraordinary producers to work on a Star Wars film together. Get some direction for the franchise, because, it's pretty obvious when you sit down and you talk about projects. If somebody's responsible for Lucasfilm over there, the head of a studio, and you ask them what they're working on and when are things supposed to be coming out, it's pretty obvious if she doesn't have anything that she doesn't have anything. And could this be the future where Star Wars is collapsed in under the Marvel studio? If it was me, especially with Iger looking to save money, I don't see why he wouldn't do that. I don't know why he needs Kathleen Kennedy running Lucasfilm if all she's responsible for now is Star Wars. The fans don't like it. She can't even get any movies out. They're cutting back on the releases of Marvel and Star Wars, so they've probably got more than enough capacity at Marvel to take on anything they were going to be doing at Star Wars. That could happen. I would keep an eye out for that. Let me know what you think of that idea in the comments below. Marvel and Star Wars under Marvel? What the heck? You'll save some money and maybe you'll get some movies out. That quote sounds like a delicate balancing act to placate Kennedy. It definitely was. According to sources, Kathy was never enthusiastic about the Feige project. Even after some recent Marvel stumbles, Feige is by far the most powerful creative executive at Disney. His success in Kennedy's sandbox would be hugely embarrassing for her, especially given all the problems on the Star Wars film. All the filmmakers that have come to develop at Lucasfilm with so much fanfare and departed after a frustrating process, and the other failures of the franchise management that's been written about. The comparison is actually pretty stark. Since Lucasfilm's 2019 release of The Rise of Skywalker, Feige's Marvel has made 8 movies that grossed more than $6 billion worldwide, despite the pandemic challenges and the same Disney Plus series commitments that Lucasfilm has. Indiana Jones 5 is coming in June, and Kennedy announced another round of projects at Star Wars Celebration, yet there's still no Star Wars film ready for an official green light, perhaps pushing the next installment to 2026. A full 7 years after The Rise of Skywalker. For those keeping score, the announced projects from Patty Jenkins, Rian Johnson, and the Game of Thrones guys are all either scrapped or backburnered. Now it's Obey Chinoy, James Mangold, who've made the new Indy, and Dave Filoni of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, plus Taika Waititi and Sean Levy. Let's see how many of those projects actually happen, and if they don't, how many Kathleen Kennedy will selectively forget to have developed in the first place. Now, the process of how they produce movies at Lucasfilm is pretty ridiculous and impossible. And that would explain why they're not actually producing any movies. This is an earlier article discussing it in detail from Puck. It's time to take Star Wars movies away from Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is one of the most prolific producers in Hollywood history, but it's time for someone else to manage the Star Wars franchise. Here's how they run the business over at Lucasfilm. Having talked to a few insiders, the real culprit is the dreaded creative differences. Patty Jenkins, who was developing Rogue Squadron, couldn't agree on the script with Lucasfilm executives, including Senior VP Michelle Rejwan. That's not unusual, of course, but it's a laughably recurring problem at Lucasfilm under President Kathleen Kennedy. Top filmmakers are dying to make a Star Wars movie until they sign on and experience the micromanagement and plot point by committee process. It happened to the Game of Thrones guys, who were hired to create a new trilogy but also bailed. It also happened to Rian Johnson, thank God, writer and director of 2017's The Last Jedi, whose own planned trilogy was shelved. Jenkins wasn't willing to dick around, and she had other projects, notably Wonder Woman 3 at Warner Brothers, not anymore, and supposedly had a lot more creative freedom. Since 2012, when Disney paid $4 billion for George Lucas's company and installed Kathleen Kennedy as his hand-picked steward, Disney had sold billions of dollars in toys, books, games, and other merchandise, incorporated Star Wars lands into its theme parks, pioneered virtual production techniques at Industrial Light and Magic, and generated a slew of TV projects, including The Mandalorian, by far the most important series to Disney+. But when it comes to Star Wars films, the basis of the franchise, and the skill set that Kennedy, one of the most successful and prolific film producers of all time, brought to the company, what a mess. It might seem hyperbolic to say, given that 5 Star Wars movies under Disney's umbrella, beginning with 2015's The Force Awakens and ending with 2019's The Rise of Skywalker, have collectively grossed about $6 billion, but the litany of botched productions and missed opportunities could form the curriculum for a film school seminar called Franchise Mismanagement. So let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Did you think that Kathleen Kennedy was lying? I mean, isn't that kind of a wild lie to openly state? It's not like Kevin Feige is not at Marvel anymore. Her boss, Alan Horn, is not at Marvel anymore, so he's not going to contradict her most likely. But why would she make a statement like that? What the hell is she thinking? Or is it that maybe she is on her way out? She's got these projects announced. She's got Indy coming out in June, and maybe she is leaving in July after that statement. And these projects maybe are going to be taken over by Marvel's production. I don't see why they need Kathleen Kennedy. If they want to do terrible projects, they can have Kevin Feige responsible for that. Since Marvel was producing so much more content in the last year or two anyway, it would be easy for them to take on development of Star Wars films as well as Star Wars TV shows. Maybe they just didn't want to make such a big announcement just now with all the other changes they have at Disney. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. Let me know if you would get rid of Kathleen Kennedy and absorb her into Kevin Feige. I don't see why they shouldn't do that. I think they should get rid of Kevin Feige too. But if you're going to have at least one of these people, why do you need both of them? Always love to see your comments. Let me know what you think in those comments below. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.